About 100 basalt stones, a 50-metre egg-shaped outline, and one missing public location. That is the problem at the centre of Victoria's unexplained ancient Aboriginal stone structures. By the end, you will know why researchers tested this place against 10,000 random layouts and why custodians still keep its exact position protected. Most people pass through the country between Melbourne and Ballarat thinking of traffic, dry grass, wire fences, and the low thump of tyres on country roads. But under that familiar surface sits Wurdi Youang on Wathaurong country, stones 0.5 metre to 1 metre high, arranged with a major axis sitting close to east and west. The claim is careful, but it is powerful. 3 waist-high stones on the western side appear to line up with solstice and equinox sunsets. A separate Victorian basalt landscape, Budj Bim, has aquaculture channels at least 6,600 years old, recognised by UNESCO in 2019. So if this ring is real evidence, why is Victoria still treating it like a footnote? Subscribe if you want the hidden record. That protected location matters because the silence around the place is part of the evidence now. If a stone arrangement has already survived weather, grazing, road lines, and 2 centuries of people walking past basalt without reading it, then publishing a pin on a map would not be harmless. The responsible description stays broad. Wathaurong country, between Melbourne and Ballarat. Low volcanic stone under open sky, dry grass brushing against the legs, wind moving through fence wire with that thin humming sound you hear in paddocks after the heat has gone out of the day. Inside that withheld landscape sits the egg-shaped basalt arrangement. From ground level, it would be easy to mistake the stones for scattered field rock, until the shape starts to hold. The outline is deliberate enough to be recorded, studied, and protected, yet incomplete enough to keep asking questions. And at the western end, where the land rises slightly, 3 stones stand apart in importance. They are the place where the whole mystery begins to face the setting sun. From those western stones, the arrangement stops being just a shape on the ground and becomes a line of sight. Imagine standing there as the heat leaves the basalt, with dust on your shoes and the evening insects starting up in the grass. Researchers describe the major axis as sitting within a few degrees of east and west. That matters because the western horizon is where the test begins. At different points of the year, the sun does not set in the same place. It shifts along the skyline slowly, season by season. At Wurdi Youang, the 3 larger stones appear to work with outlying stones toward the sunset points for the solstices and the equinoxes. The claim is measured because the dating is still difficult, but the pattern is strong enough that a study in 2013 treated it as something to test, not wave away. And then came the sharper clue. The sides of the stone outline seemed to repeat the same solar pattern, as if the site had more than one way of saying the same thing. The second pattern is where the argument becomes harder to dismiss. One line of stones might be chance. A rough match to one sunset point might be coincidence. Yet when the viewing stones and the sides of the layout both point back toward the same seasonal positions, the site starts to feel less like scattered basalt and more like a built record. The researchers did not leave it at a feeling. In the study published in Rock Art Research in 2013, they compared the arrangement with 10,000 random layouts. The result was a Monte Carlo improbability of about 0.25% for those solar patterns appearing by chance. The number does not turn the place into a solved machine. The grass still hides parts of the ground. The stones are weathered, rough under the hand, dark with age and lichen. Custodians still hold the deeper responsibility for how the site is spoken about. Yet, after that test, one question becomes unavoidable. If chance is the weak explanation, then what kind of knowledge shaped the stones? The question leads straight into the hardest part of the whole case: age. Stone can hold a line across the horizon, but it does not carry a neat label saying when human hands placed it there. Researchers and custodians have discussed an estimate of around 10,000 to 11,000 years for Wurdi Youang. Say that slowly. If direct dating ever supports it, these stones would sit thousands of years before Stonehenge and far deeper than the ancient monuments most people picture when they hear the words early astronomy. The caveat matters. Basalt does not date like charcoal from a hearth. The surface is cold in the morning, hot by afternoon, rough with lichen, and silent under the fingers. Movement, erosion, grazing, and later disturbance can all blur the timeline. The mystery is held carefully. The alignment evidence presses one way. The dating problem pulls another. Between them sits a protected Victorian stone arrangement that may be much older than the world history many of us were taught, if the ground can ever give up its date. That uncertainty matters more when you place the stones back into Victoria's wider basalt country. Wurdi Youang is not sitting in a blank landscape. It belongs to a region where volcanic rock was shaped, read, and used across deep time. The clearest comparison is Budj Bim, far to the west, where Gunditjmara people built channels and weirs from basalt to guide and hold eels. Those aquaculture channels go back at least 6,600 years, and the landscape was listed by UNESCO in 2019. Water still moves through parts of that country with a dark, earthy smell, sliding past stone edges made by human planning. That matters for Wurdi Youang because it changes the question. A basalt structure with careful placement no longer has to be treated as an isolated oddity. Victoria already has official proof of ancient Aboriginal engineering in stone, so when a protected ring on Wathaurong country appears to track the sun, the sharper question becomes this: how many other stone places were misread before anyone thought to ask what they were doing? That possibility is why protection becomes part of the story, not a side note. Around Wurdi Youang, the silence on the map is deliberate. A place made of standing basalt can be damaged by one careless vehicle, one souvenir hunter, or one person deciding the stones are only obstacles in a paddock. Other Aboriginal stone arrangements in Victoria have not all survived cleanly. Some were broken by land clearing, some were shifted before anyone recorded their pattern, some may have disappeared so quietly that no register, no researcher, and no custodian had the chance to argue for them. So, when traditional owners and heritage workers keep this site guarded, they are protecting more than rock. They are protecting the question itself. The dry grass, the dark stones, the western rise, the sunset line, all of it has to remain intact if the evidence is ever going to be read properly. And that creates a strange tension for the rest of us. The less we are shown, the more serious the place becomes, because secrecy may be the only reason the next clue is still there. That protected silence also changes how we should think about the word astronomy. At Wurdi Youang, the important thing is not a modern label placed over old stones. The important thing is the repeated relationship between basalt, horizon, season, and country. If you stand near the western rise in your mind, the scene is simple. Rough stone at knee and waist height, grass ticking against itself, the orange sun dropping toward a low skyline. But for people who watch that horizon over generations, the shifting sunset could carry practical and cultural meaning. Seasons affect movement, food, ceremony, and law. Researchers can measure angles, they can test chance, they can compare a solstice sunset alignment with the shape of the ring. Custodians hold a different responsibility: how the place is approached, what can be shared, and what must remain protected. So, the site sits between two kinds of knowledge, measured and inherited. And the closer we get to the sunset evidence, the more obvious it becomes that the stones were never silent. By this point, the evidence has started to stack in a way that is difficult to walk away from. A protected place on Wathaurong country, a ring of basalt held in an egg-like shape, western stones facing the sunset, a second set of lines repeating the seasonal pattern, then, at the test, 10,000 random layouts and only about 0.25% matching the pattern by chance. Add the age estimate, still carefully held, around 10,000 to 11,000 years. Add Budj Bim in the wider Victorian record, proving that ancient Aboriginal engineering in basalt was real, complex, and officially recognized. Now, picture the final minutes of light. The stones would be cooling under the hand, the grass would smell dry and dusty. The sun would lower toward the same horizon that made researchers pause. If future dating supports the estimate, world history may have to make room for a quiet Victorian stone arrangement, and for a sunset line that was never meant to be random. So the final scene is not a gate opening to tourists or a solved plaque fixed beside the stones. It is quieter than that. A protected rise, a line of dark basalt, and the last light of the day touching the western horizon where the evidence has been pointing all along. Wurdi Youang remains careful history. The alignments have been argued through measurement and testing. The age estimate is powerful, but still waiting for stronger dating. The exact place stays guarded because the stones cannot answer new questions if they are moved, broken, or loved to death. That is the real weight of Victoria's unexplained ancient Aboriginal stone structures. They ask us to treat uncertainty with respect. In the cooling dusk, the ring does not need a loud label. The sun lowers, the grass settles, and the old stones keep their line. If you know a local place with hidden history that deserves proper custodial care, leave its story carefully in the comments and stay with the channel for more ancient Australian history most maps never teach.